What's going on? Welcome to another episode of Alignment First, where we're on a mission to bring leaders back to their peace, presence, and power. And I have with me the founder of Coonrod Co. and the author of The Preparation Principle, Eric Coonrod. What's going on, brother? How are you, man?
I'm doing good, Michael. It's good to see you.
We're at the tail end of a long day, and I really appreciate you making the time because I know you got a lot going on. You got some travel lined up, and you're squeezing this in for us to have this really awesome conversation. And I want to lead off with how much I appreciate this book, because all of our clients that we've introduced it to who are on the other side of M&A, it is unanimous thus far. Like, where the fuck was this book before I tried to sell my company? It still would have had its challenges, whatever those were, and they're numerous as you lay it out in this book. But it would definitely smoothed out the process, if nothing else, pointed out and given some foresight into the hurdles and the points of friction that come along with trying to move through mergers and acquisitions. So for everything that this book presents, thank you, brother.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. I'm glad you read it. I appreciate reading it. It's actually, I've been surprised at how well it's been received.
Yeah.
I wanted to make it short for a reason, but I was really trying to do that. Just teach people about the process and let them know that it's not easy. It takes a long time. You want to prepare far in advance and put a very good team around you to make sure you maximize value, but not just money monetarily, but the structure and all the reps and warranties and life after the sale. So I'm glad you liked it. So far, it's been well received.
Well, one of the cool parts that was unexpected, the X's and O's, and as you describe, being the investment banker as the quarterback of this journey and transaction. Let's start at the end, because what I thought was just so eloquently put in the preparation principle was the end, where you talked about life after the sale. And what I really love about your approach is being with your clients in, not to overuse the term, but preparation for the sale, obviously the process of itself, and then also being available and setting them up for success once it's gone through to successful completion. What are the elements of the experience that are unforeseen by somebody who sells a company?
You mean before the sale or post sale, or both?
Post sale.
Post sale. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with that they are in their business 80, 90 hours a week, and have done this for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And it's their identity. Mm-hmm. So once they sell and their identity is almost gone, if they don't play golf, what are they going to do? They have to find a hobby. So what I've taught a lot of my clients is the concept of majority recap. And most of them, I would say 90% don't know what that means. They have no idea what that means. What it means is this: you can sell your business to a private equity firm and sell 90% or 80%. And you can sell that to a private equity firm that knows what they're doing, that builds companies, makes them better, grows them, sells them. And you can still stay on, going back to what you wanted to do in the beginning. So many entrepreneurs, they'll start a business because they love their sales. They have this product they love to sell. But after a couple of years, when it grows, they're doing very little sales. They're working with their legal, AR, taxes, accounting, and a very small part of their day is sales. So they start to hate the business. So I tell them, what if I could diversify your income, sell your business, put money in your pocket for you and your family, and still allow you to take a portion of that, roll it with a professional buyer and seller of companies, and you go back to just sales. No HR, no accounting, no legal, just sales. What do you think? And they say, well, absolutely, sign me up. So when I do that, oftentimes, and most of my deals are majority recaps, they'll have to stay on for 1, 2, or 3 years. And if it goes well, if we find the right buyer and things go well post-sale, they end up liking it. So they can gradually go into retirement or something else, where it's not just one day they're the owner, the next day they're not. So they can actually try to find their identity over 1, 2, or 3 years when they're just selling and they're probably working 20, 30 hours a week, not 80.
how does that transition typically go? Is it as smooth as it sounds like to me? Like I'm going to cash out, downgrade my role and subsequently responsibilities, and it's smooth sailing? Or is there also a shift in identity required for that lesser, more fulfilling role?
It's a good question on it being smooth. I can give you recent examples of one was very smooth and one where it was a disaster because the buyer wasn't ethical. So
Okay.
it's case by case.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's never easy riding, right? You have to one day you're in charge of everything, and the
Mm-hmm.
next day you're answering to somebody else. That is never easy. Never easy. It takes a person to one, you find the right buyer and good chemistry in advance of the actual finalizing of the sale. And you
Mm-hmm.
hope they build they build what they're going to do 1 or 2 or 3 years together, not just the buyer, but buyer and seller together. They build the roadmap for 1, 2, 3 years. So
Mm-hmm.
if the seller's part of that, they feel better about it. And if they put this roadmap together, this plan together, and the buyer is sincere and they follow through, it can be quite simple. It can be a win-win for everybody. Again,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had clients where they sold 75% and rolled 25%. And 5 years later, the 25% was worth much more than the 75%. That's what you want to see happen. And it does happen.
Right.
It does happen. Yeah.
The identity piece is obviously a huge part of what we focus on with our clients. And I love the fact that you identified it as part of the process beyond the financial X's and O's of mergers and acquisition. If the investment banker, if the Eric Coonrod of the world is the quarterback of this team, what are the other positions that are required that one who is selling needs to have on their team that are essential to making this go as smooth as possible?
It's a great question. An M&A attorney, so not just any attorney. A lot of my clients have their corporate attorney. No, an M&A attorney that knows the M&A process. Mm-hmm. A good wealth manager, because you're going to have all this money. Where do you put it post-sale? Mm-hmm. Very important. A tax advisor. How do we properly structure the transaction in advance to minimize tax? Mm-hmm. You're going to have to pay tax, but there are very smart people that come up with very good ways to minimize tax.
Right.
And then you have to have a good accounting firm to help you with, your yearly, annual financial statements. So, tax advisor, private wealth manager, attorney, accountant, and the banker. That's a full team.
Right. And who's doing what to see this all the way through?
That's a great question. So I'll use what I've done recently I've got Coonrod Co, but I'm starting something different called the Legacy Group. So it's going to be accounting. It's going to be investment banking in the middle, private wealth management at the end, and now a fourth piece, which is consulting. So what I do, and I've got 3 clients right now where I before I took them on, I want to make sure that their financials are accurate. And when you're a business owner and you're running your business, you probably have a bookkeeper, but not a CFO or controller. So you think you might know your financials. These last 3 clients don't know their financials. Smart people, great people, good business owners. The cash flow they thought they had wasn't quite accurate. So we said, stop, that's fine, no big deal. So I brought in an accounting firm, it's my partner, and they made sure that they reviewed, qualified the financials, made some switches, told me and my client what true EBITDA was, revenue EBITDA, and we went to market. So that's super important. So that's what one stage of it is, making sure you have the accounting firm review the numbers to make sure they're accurate. Okay.
Let's pause sure. Right there, because this is really interesting, because these are obviously successful individuals who have built a company, driven a mission that is profitable in some sense of the word, that allows them to make a sale attractive to a buyer. Mm-hmm. So they're not stupid. They're of good character, right? They've made all the right moves as far as business is concerned. And when we get to this spot where they're having this initial conversation with you, what are the areas of unawareness, I'll call them, with regards to their numbers that give them that false positive?
Let's use the 3 recent examples. And again, all 3 business owners were fantastic people. very good at what they did in their niche, and had a great business. They may have given too much faith and confidence into a person to run their books that wasn't qualified. So it's like, if you're off 1 degree at the 1 yard line is a lot different. What does it look like at the 100 yard line? You're way off. So again, what might be small in the first year can compound quite dramatically after 2, 3, 4 years. And that's what I saw in these instances. So great people, great integrity, great businesses, just didn't have their pulse on the financials like they thought they did. And again, that can grow to be a big problem after 3 or 4 years.
And hypothetically, what could that look like in terms of a red flag that you didn't see the way you were running your business versus how the books need to look at point of sale?
Well, on one of these examples, I looked at the numbers, and we were looking at $3 million of EBITDA. And by me looking at the balance sheet and the income statement over a couple of years, I knew something didn't make sense. Something was off. So I brought the accounting firm in. This was 2 years ago. And the $3 million of EBITDA ended up being 1.3 of EBITDA. So I had three LOIs, letters of intent. We'll talk about that. All 3 failed because they thought it was 3. Now it's 1.3. And now they don't trust the integrity of anything. I'm not calling my client a liar, but maybe that's a lot more problems I haven't uncovered yet. I'm going to walk away, fix it, and come back in a couple of years.
What was accounting for the delta, that 1.7 delta?
Double counting revenue. Great question. This was a very complicated business and business services. And the bookkeeper, who was an offsite bookkeeper, a third-party bookkeeper, didn't accurately understand how the revenue was counted, and ended up double booking major accounts over a 2 or 3 year period.
And is this kind of example common?
More so than you'd like to believe. Yes, it is. That was pretty dramatic, but yes, that is quite common. And it's been even if that was a $1.7 million cash flow mistake. I've had one recently that was $400,000. Well, that doesn't sound dramatic, but if you put a multiple of 4, 5, or 6 times of that becomes dramatic.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money to my client. So, and also for me, it also hurts my process. If I go out with numbers and I say it's 3 of EBITDA and we find out it's 2.5 of EBITDA, that's a problem. That gives the buyer ammunition to not only reduce purchase price, but to poke holes in a lot of other things as well, further reducing purchase price.
Right. Okay. So that's the bookkeeper, and why that is so, the accounting firm is so critical to getting this thing to the finish line. Who's the next cog in the wheel? Who's the next position on the team?
The attorney. The M&A attorney is very, very important. I will talk about a deal 15 years ago. It's not a public company, but it's a brand you would know in frozen food. And we were selling the company, and we had a pretty good buyer on the table. And the buyer during diligence said, "You realize you don't own your trademarks?" Like, what do you mean? They no longer owned their trademarks. They didn't refile. So that killed that deal, right? Because the M&A attorney that's not an M&A attorney, that's a corporate attorney, but they didn't stick with the annual updating your licenses and all your agreements. So an M&A attorney is very important. They want to make sure that when you're going through the process, that from a reps and warranty standpoint, that everything you're saying, that it's true. And they can make sure that you're properly and legally covered in the transaction so that you don't sell for $30 million and the buyer comes back a year later and takes away $10 million because you weren't properly prepared. So the M&A attorney is extremely important.
Who does it, obviously in leadership, especially specifically in entrepreneurship, it defies gravity and that shit rolls uphill. So the onus obviously is on the visionary owner of these companies. But the liability, is that on the corporate attorney who's over his skis and out of scope, or in the day-to-day building of your mission and vision, does the M&A attorney come in later, or can a corporate attorney who's been on your team since the beginning be groomed to wear that hat if this is on the horizon? Like, where does the M&A expertise come in as far as the organization is concerned?
It's a great question. They're two separate attorneys. The corporate attorney, who is counsel for the business, he's responsible for checking all the stuff like make sure your trademarks are filed properly.
Mm-hmm.
The M&A attorney will come in when they're time for a sale, probably right before the LOI stage. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yep.
But could the corporate attorney become the M&A attorney? Probably not. I mean, I'm guessing for some major corporations that they're one and the same. But in my world, the corporate attorney is never the M&A attorney because it's two different skill sets. Both are needed, but different skill sets.
Got it. And they're playing their respective positions at different stages of the life cycle of the business.
That's correct. It's like you wouldn't have an eye doctor do a heart surgery. It's just different. They're both doctors. They have their certain skill set, but they're needed for certain parts of the body or certain parts of the transaction in this case.
But while the business is being built and scaling, the M&A expertise isn't necessary.
That's a really good question. I would say if they have a strong corporate attorney, maybe not, but often my clients don't. So I would say, yes, you have the M&A attorney come in a couple years in advance, 2 years in advance, and make sure everything's set and the insurance is there and they're covered. And if it's not, they fix it far in advance of a sale. The last thing you want to find out is during a process that something's missing. You want to find out 6 months, 12 months, 18 months in advance to fix the problem. So when we go to sell, it's clean. Everything's easy. There's nothing done. So I would say with all these people I'm going to talk about, try to get them in 24 months prior to sale. And the attorney, he or she won't do much work, but have them take a look at the books and the records, make sure it's fine. Find problems. If not, great. Call me in. We'll do it in 6 months. We'll do it again in a year. And then call me when you go to sell. So even though their time is minimized, you should have them come in and take a look.
Mm-hmm. If I'm a business owner and I know the sun is setting on my career and I need to start positioning myself for this transition, is that the moment that I start building this team? No, with everything that you know and the foresight that you present in the preparation principle, as soon as I start to have that thought, is it just best practice here to just start at least interviewing these positions?
I'm going to answer your question slightly different. I would say the best time to prepare for a sale is the day you start the company. You should start the company thinking about when you want to sell and work backwards. If I want to sell in 5 years, 7 years, have that vision, figure out what you want from the sale and work backwards. So bringing on an M&A attorney or a good accountant or a good tax advisor, you can never do that too early, or a private wealth manager. You can never do that too early. So if you're with your wife one day and you realize that you've missed the past 5 birthdays of your kids, okay, it's time to sell in 2 or 3 years. That's a fine time too. If it's 2 or 3 years out, interviewing you should have a good accountant on board right there, but a good investment banker, a good tax advisor, a good attorney, yes, 2 or 3 years in advance, it's a good time to have the conversations. So they're the good ones, the ones that I work with, the ones that I intro to my clients. My client will learn something from every phone call, so they'll be better off after the phone call. Why not do that? It's free advice.
Right.
Give it a shot.
Sure. So that covers the investment banker, the accounting firm, bookkeepers, the M&A attorney. Who's left?
The tax advisor. So that's a very, very important role. I want my clients to talk to tax advisors at least 6 months or a year prior to sale, because they can put in good strategies that can really save my client tens of thousands or millions of dollars. And it happens on a regular basis. So you want to have one of those at least 6 months in advance. And one thing I do too, that I'm not sure how many bankers do it, is that oftentimes a buyer wants to have an asset sale, not a stock sale, for tax reasons.
What's the difference?
So, pardon?
What's the difference?
A lot of differences. So for one thing, you can actually step up. If it's an asset sale, you can buy the assets and step up the basis, which means you're going to pay less taxes when you sell. So that's why they want to do that. They can play some accounting tricks, the buyer, to have lower tax in advance. Sometimes you want to do a stock sale because it's easier, it's quicker, and it's a much easier transaction. Okay. But you also take all the liabilities. However, because a stock sale and an asset sale, not always, and I wouldn't even say it often, but sometimes, if that the asset sale and the stock sale, the buyer chooses that, but the asset sale might be worse for my client than a stock sale for tax purposes. So I say, fine, I have a tax advisor do the analysis, and based on many factors, asset sale taxes are X, stock sale taxes are X times 2. Great. I tell the buyer, great, I'm fine with an asset sale, but you have to make up the delta for that tax difference. And that doesn't always go over well, but I certainly give it a shot and try.
Okay. Got it.
So to answer your question, a tax advisor is very, very important towards the later innings, but still important.
Sure. And they're really, it sounds like they're the tax advisor is really the voice of reason as to what the best version of the sale is, based on, because is the tax advisor on the team of the selling party bias towards the selling client, or are they looking for a neutral ground as far as tax implications are concerned to smooth the sale and lessen, or does the buyer also have that role on their side and they're going back and forth?
So again, if you're the seller and you're hiring the tax advisor, they're on your side. They're trying to help you structure a transaction and minimize taxes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that can be in line with the buyer's efforts. Sometimes it can be complete opposite. The buyer is going to dictate asset sale or stock sale most of the time. Okay. Now, if they really want an asset really, really bad, the seller might have some power saying, I'm only going to do this. But for the most part, the buyer's going to dictate one or the other. So that's why I say, fine, if you want an asset sale and my client wants a stock sale, I will do that. In most cases, you have to give me the difference in the tax implications. So, but the tax advisor on our side is fighting for our client. My client's paying them for their advice, but they're just they're not dictating which way we go. They're just saying, if it's a stock sale, here's taxes. If it's a asset sale, here's taxes. And by the way, let me do my best to minimize both by getting in 6 months in advance or a year in advance and setting up certain structures that minimize tax regardless.
Right. Okay. Got it. And the last remaining position on this team is the wealth management firm.
Great. That's right. That's very important. Now, here's something that I like to do is that I told my clients, okay, what do you want in a sale? And they might say $20 or $30 million. And I asked them to talk to a wealth manager. Why do you want that? So they'll say, well, to live my life properly, I need $20 million in my sale. That'll keep me going to be happy. However, what they don't realize is that if they talk to a private wealth manager, a good one, who can give tax advice as well, they might structure certain things with trusts and charitable givings where they can get the same living expenses on 16 million, not 20, because it's properly planned where their after-tax income is the same on 16 as this 20. If it's done properly with certain structures and trusts. So that's why they should get it in advance, where they think their number is 20, it might be 16. So sometimes that helps me actually sell the business, where if they thought it was 20 and I couldn't get them 20, that wasn't worth 20, but they wouldn't sell. And now I say, well, if I can get you 16, you're at the same place. Okay. Well, we just made a transaction happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So wealth managers are very important as well.
How challenging is it for you to get an accurate depiction of a desired outcome for your clients? Because I feel like the number is so easy to fixate on versus what you just described. Like, if we could accomplish that goal at a $16 million sale, that's a seemingly easier conversation to have than accomplish that same outcome at 20 million. And how challenging is it to position that without sounding like you're lowballing your own client?
It's very challenging. I would say more of what I do is like, it's more psychology than finance, by the way, at this point in my career. So it is very challenging, but that's why I try to surround my clients with a lot of intelligent people. So it's not just me giving them advice. And I've got a certain amount of expertise, but I stay in my lane. And I hire experts to do what they do, taxes or wealth management. So if it's done properly, with the client, educating your client far in advance, it goes a long way. I'll give you a quick example. So I had a call last week with a client I'm bringing on board, and he's a great individual, great doctor. He bought my book. He read the book before the call, and the first thing he said, he's a doctor.
Everybody should.
Correct.
I'm plugging this book the whole time, man. Everybody needs to read the preparation principle.
Here's a great example. So it was like 8:00 at night, because he's a doctor, works all day and all night. He was excited about the book. He goes, I thought this would take 3 months and cost me nothing. This is going to take me 9 months and cost me a lot of money. And I said, yes, sir, it's going to. I'm glad you know that now. So that is helpful. Think about that. That's a big, these are smart men and women. You have to, if they're educated about the process and not surprised, it goes over a lot better. The surprise is what makes people angry. It's like, I thought it was this, and it's this. So my job is to get the surprises out of the way well in advance, that we've had time to talk about the pros and cons of whatever it might be. So if I say, if I, on day one, if I say I'll get you 20, on day 9 months later, I get you 16, they're going, what the hell is this? But if you do the planning saying 16 is the same, who cares? Then, okay, I'll take 16. So again, it's education. Let your clients know what they're about to get into, because it's a long process. It's very stressful, and educate them on what's going to happen and let them know you'll be there along the way. It helps out quite a bit.
Yeah. And who's fielding the late night phone calls, the seller's remorse? There were two terms that you used in the book that I found absolutely fascinating. There's the seller's remorse, and there was another blind spot that most sellers are unaware of. What was that second component?
God, you put me on the spot. I forget myself. The second blind spot. It's probably going to be that they're not ready for retirement. I'm going to guess.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they're going to do with themselves once they sell the business.
Yeah. The power of choice. I take so many notes in this thing, man. Everything. The 24-month rule, full sale, 100% acquisition, majority recap.
I'm trying to think what it would be. I think
let's back up. Let's talk about the walkaway owner versus the legacy owner.
Okay. So yes, there are clients. I've had a few, not often actually. I have a few where they say, "Give me the best price. I don't care. I want to get out of this." That's the walkaway. So give me the best price. Make it sure that I structure it properly, or I'm not going to be sued, or they're going to claw back the purchase price in 12 months. But that's all I care about. The legacy owner, they built something in their name, and they care very much for their employees, and maybe their children, and maybe they want someone to take it over in the family. So they try to do a sale where they can actually sell it, majority, do a recap, but keep all their employees taken care of, and maybe have a way where their son or daughter takes over their role as president someday. That's like a legacy client where they want to keep the business going.
Which one of those is most common?
The legacy.
Okay.
I have very few clients that want to sell and walk away. Most of my clients do care very much about the company they built. It's their name and reputation, and they care very much for their employees. I've been lucky in that aspect. That's most of my clients.
Is there a sense of ego that gets in the way with the legacy client because they're too particular about what goes into carrying their legacy forward?
Absolutely. That happens all the time.
And how do you talk them off that ledge? Like, because I feel like it's a double-edged sword. You're almost damned if you do and damned if you don't, because it's like, look, yeah, this is your baby. You built it. You deserve to carry this legacy forward. And at the same time, it seems to me as if there's an element of the reality is the whole cake and eat it too thing that you can't have. So right. How do you have that conversation between what their ideal based on the emotional investment they have above and beyond blood, sweat, and tears, and the reality of moving on to the next phase of your life?
So it happens in a couple different ways. First of all, you at the LOI stage, letter of intent, that's when it gets pretty serious. Now you're narrowing it down to one buyer and one seller, and you've got about 90 days to close the deal. So that's when it's pretty important. So at that point in time, you remind them, we chose this buyer for a reason. And we went on this process, 9 months ago, maybe 9 years ago, who knows? We got you. You've planned this for a long time. We put a lot of hard work in. I'm giving you mostly what you need, or exactly what you want, what you asked for. Remind them of that, he or she of that. Remind them of that. And then as the diligence process goes through, the buyer is going to show you their cards. They've told you a lot of stuff in advance, and during diligence, they're going to show you exactly who they are. When it comes to, I'll take care of your employees. Okay. Is there an option pool for my employees for stock? Okay. My 5 or 6 main employees, whatever it might be, they need employment agreements. How are those drafted? How are those negotiated? So he or she will know, the seller will know in the 3-month process, 4-month process, how the buyer acts. And remember, they can pull the plug. If we're 90 days down the process, about to sign and close, and the buyers act like a jerk, my client can walk away. You're not who you said you are. You're not going to take care of my legacy or my clients, or my customers and my employees. I'm out. It can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Happened before.
Yeah. Oh. Is it what's more likely to occur, an issue of integrity or just simply put ego getting in the way on one side or the other? What's most common in your experience if a deal goes south that close to the finish line?
Ego. I can't think of many clients I've had that lacked integrity.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of one. He's a billionaire, but I'm not going to get too much into that. Get sued. Most of them do not lack integrity. Mm-hmm. It could be ego. It could be remorse. I think I wrote this in my book where I had a client who died.
I found it. it. The 2 blind spots in the process of mergers and acquisition is deal fatigue is real, and the shock of seller's remorse. It takes a lot more effort, time, and energy to get this thing to the finish line. And then the identity thing that you were talking about at the beginning of like, oh shit, who am I without this company? Or without this role. Right. So the deal fatigue was fascinating to me because it's, again, unanimous in my clients who are on the other side of M&A. Like, damn it, where was this book? Because as you move through business, as you buy homes over the course of your life, that process is always more expensive and takes longer. Like there are all these other metaphors that sound awfully similar to the blind spots that you present in the preparation principle. And at the same time, what's hilarious to me is the narrative that your clients would buy into, that this is different. Well, almost as if it defies this universal principle of it's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much.
Right. Deal fatigue is something that happens, if not every transaction, almost 9 out of 10 transactions, where someone, oftentimes the CFO, says enough is enough. And that's when I have to jump in and let the buyer know, if you keep pushing, this deal is dead. And that happens about every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the push? Where is the pressure being applied that makes the team fall apart?
The pressure being applied during closing diligence comes in 2 main places: accounting diligence and legal diligence. So the very first initial list from an accounting firm right after the LOI could be an Excel file of 600 or 700 requests. Overwhelming. And then, and it could be bigger for $1 billion transactions. And then when your CFO and your CEO and your controller spend 3 or 4 consecutive nights up all day, trying to run the business, they fulfill this request list. And then a week later, the same questions are asked again, and then again, and they never stop. That's something every single time. I don't like to exaggerate. Every time I've got to go into the buyer and I say, because you remember the accounting guys, they're doing their job. They're going to ask questions until I say, stop. It's enough. We've answered all these questions. It's all I have. Every time that happens, and the buyer can push me and say no, and I'll say see ya, or okay, great, we're there. And the second time, when the lawyers come in, they'll put together a diligence checklist that might be 20 or 30 pages. So my client's got to go through that, find this document, find that document from 10 years ago. That becomes extremely stressful. And again, the attorneys never, ever stop until someone comes in and says, enough is enough. So those are 2 pressure points on every transaction. They drive me crazy. They drive my clients crazy. That's when deal fatigue sets in. And remember, they're running a business and doing the second business of selling the business. And by that time, you're probably, if you're lucky, you're in month 6 or 7. And that's been a long time.
Yeah. Holy shit. So what makes a guy like you attracted to this profession?
Insanity. I mentor a lot of young men and women, and I was part of recruiting for my last 4 firms. Mm-hmm. And now I tell people, if you want to get into investment banking, it is probably the best. It's not probably, it's the best experience for business career the first 3 years. It's hard. It's miserable. It's the best experience of your entire life. The best learning experience, the worst experience personally, the best learning experience ever. After 3 years, do something else because it's hard.
Yeah. What makes it hard? Obviously, we've talked about the chemistry of the people equation involved in buying and selling a company. But what makes it hard?
The hours are grueling. You're asked to work a lot of hours. That's not an exaggeration. Mm-hmm. You're talking about people's money, so they take that very seriously. Mm-hmm. You're talking about very complex issues that you have to work through. And you're talking about oftentimes it's got to be done right now, quickly. So it's very complicated, high stress, high risk, high reward. You got to be very, very intelligent to do it properly for long periods of time. You have to have different skill sets. You got to be good like this, communicate. You have to be able to write well, do numbers quickly, negotiate. It's a lot to do it successfully. And I don't think a lot of people realize how also too, you have to be able to fail all the time and be okay with it. Mm-hmm. You're going to fail constantly. And maybe it's not your own fault. You put out a great company to sell. You get 3 LOIs. You get down to the last minute, then the buyer walks away. That's a fail. It's not your fault, but it's a fail. So a lot goes into it. It's a grind, man.
Is there any, and without placating yourself or pandering to your client, is there any success? What does success look like if a deal doesn't go through? Like, is there ever a point where it's like, it's a good thing that it didn't happen?
Absolutely. It does. There's a couple of good things that happen. And one client right now with a 3 EBITDA to 1.3 EBITDA, that's Reason, great person. One good thing that happened is he learned a lot about his business. He had never examined his business. I made him examine his business. Mm-hmm. And now he doesn't trust everybody as much. Not that he's not trusting them. He doesn't trust them to do their job. Now he's watching them. Are the numbers being accurately reported? Are the contracts in place with the attorneys properly? So they learn a lot about their business. Mm-hmm. They realize the market tells them how much it's worth. It's worth. If they thought it was worth 30 million and the market says it's worth 20, you better be honest with yourself or grow it to get to 30. Those are 2 good things. And oftentimes, that's not true. Oftentimes, sometimes when the transaction doesn't happen, because for whatever reason it might be, if it's a good company and the client's a good person, I will eventually sell the company. Oftentimes for more money 2 years down the road. Yeah. So it ends up being a good thing in the end.
Well, that's a great segue to the through line in the book that the best practice, sale or no sale, is keep growing the business.
Correct.
If the days and nights are getting long and that deal fatigue is real, and we can now see the finish line, how do you keep your client in the game all the way to the end? Like, don't take your foot off the gas. How does Eric, as the quarterback of this team, championing all the way down the field, how do you keep the owner in the game as the quarterback of their business?
If the offer is a good offer and the buyer has stuck to that offer and everything else that goes along with it, remind them why we started the process, why we planned this a year ago, 2 years ago, how much time and effort we put into this, how much money you've spent thus far, and we're so close to getting you everything you asked for. Don't turn back now. Mm-hmm. As long as the buyer stays true to what they said they would do, purchase price, structure, employees, if they haven't backed off and they have not given us a reason to walk away, don't walk away. We're almost there. Mm-hmm. And that happens all the time. And very rarely does my client walk away. I try to gauge in the beginning if they're sincere about selling. If they're just taking a flyer, I'm going to give it a shot. No thanks, not for me. But if they're serious about it for a certain reason, and we talk about all their goals, and I can't reach all the goals sometimes, but if I can get most of the goals, and we're there at that, literally at the 9th month, and we're going to close in a week, I remind them we're almost there. It happens. I tell this story a lot. It's happened on a Sunday night. My client calls me. I'm not going to sell. Okay, go get your favorite bottle of wine, your favorite, whatever it might be. Open up, pour a glass, and call me in a half an hour. That's happened many times. We'll sit and just talk. Just talk it out. I'll get a glass of wine or cigar. We'll talk it out. That happens on a regular basis. So.
Oh my gosh. And is it, how do you gauge sincerity up front? That sounds like you got to have, you have to have tripped over that landmine a lot to get that kind of clairvoyance, brother. How do you gauge sincerity up front? There's no balance sheet for that.
I can tell you I made a lot of mistakes. That's for sure in my career. I'm trying to minimize those mistakes now.
Yeah.
It's just a feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I've been taught. It's just something where you ask enough questions. Mm-hmm. You spend a lot of time with these people.
Yep.
You take them to dinner. You see how they treat a waitress or a waiter. You see how they treat their employees. I pay attention to everything. And it's after time, it's just I can just kind of gauge whether or not I'm not saying I'm not fooled, but sure. I can just kind of tell if they have integrity and whether or not they're sincere about a sale. That's the easier part. I can't always know if they're a bad person, but I can tell oftentimes if they're serious about selling or not, or they're just trying to kick the tires.
What are some of the things that you're looking for in terms of being able to differentiate kicking the tires versus trying to really make this happen?
That's a good question, man. That's a really good question. How they react to an offer. If we get an offer that is a good offer, what we talked about, and all of a sudden that's terrible. I want 2 times that. That's a big red flag right there.
Okay.
When we have buyers that are, very large companies, and trying to set up a meeting, oftentimes can be difficult. How well are they how eager are they to meet the buyer? How much are they willing to cooperate and change their schedule to meet the buyer? Or if it's not, I'm selling it, they come when I'm ready. That's a bad sign. They're not sincere. Those are 2 examples right there. That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that question before.
So you're telling me that people will come to you wanting to sell their company, and then either consciously or subconsciously start putting obstacles between them and the actual sale?
Yes.
But almost on purpose?
Yes.
Oh shit.
Remember too, we're under the agreement or one of the thought that it's one seller. Sometimes it might be 3 sellers, brothers and sisters. That's a tough one. That's a real hard one. So, one might want to sell and 2 don't, or vice versa. Oh boy. Family dynamics. Wow.
How many, but in terms of proportion, not actual number, but how many times have you encountered that in your career?
Less than 20%, but one big one.
Is there any version of that you're like, I'm not touching that?
Yes. There's many versions of it. So I per my coach's advice, I've got to work on some things, and underwriting is one of them. And one of them is 10 or 12 things that a client must have for me to take them on. And family dynamics is a big one. I check right away. If there's red flags there, nope, no thanks. Find some. I'll make a great referral to a great baker. It's just not me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Pardon my being dumbfounded, but the self-sabotage, like that blows my mind.
It's more common than you think, especially with family dynamics.
Oh my God. It's almost like, because I've seen this when we're talking about death benefits and the divergence of family with regards to someone's assets. I had had never even thought about a similar dynamic occurring in the sale of a business, specifically a family business. That's crazy.
It's unfortunate that that's where a lot of problems come in with my often. If it's going to be individuals who aren't related, but they're just part of the management team, oftentimes it's not personal, it's business. And I can get through that easier than when it's personal and it's family. That can be tough sometimes.
Damn. So what is let's walk through some of the school of hard knocks that were born of those first 3 years in the game for you. Because if they are what you say they are, there had to have been enough of a silver lining that said, you know what, now that I'm out of the woods and I'm into I'm no longer a rookie in this game, I'm gonna stick with it, which is counter to the advice you're giving. Go do something else. What was it in year 4 that made turning it into a career, despite the hell it sounds like was your first 3 years?
It's a great question. There are 5 stages to investment banking: analyst, associate, VP, director, or SVP, and managing director. And ironically, they're different skill sets.
Okay.
What makes you a great analyst will not make you a great MD. They're interlinked, and they're certainly going to be helpful, but they're different skill sets.
Are they compounding?
Correct.
Well, where you have to go through the analyst to become a good managing director, or are they separate verticals?
In my personal opinion, and there's exceptions to the rule, to be a great MD, you need to go through the entire process, because the analytical skills you build as an analyst will help you with negotiations and valuation and just thinking through a deal when you're an associate of VP. So I think all the way through, those are some of the best MDs that I've seen. Now, there are also great MDs that are great salesmen or saleswomen, and they don't have to do that, but there's still something I think missing. So to answer your question, I think you have to go through all 5.
Okay.
But to answer your other question about why did I stick it out, I was a terrible analyst. I was horrible. I became a better associate, but I knew that year 4 is when you're associate. I thought that I had the skill set to be a very good MD. If I would just learn and my boss, I had a great boss in New York. He was a stud. My nickname is Coons. He goes, Coons, you and I don't want to piss anybody off. He goes, you and I aren't Star Wars guys. We're never going to be great at this, but stick with it, learn it, knowing you're never going to be the guy who are going to sit in the closet for 5 straight weeks modeling. That's not your skill set. Learn it, and I'll teach you, and you'll be a good MD someday. And I believe that I had the skill set to be a good MD, a good VP. I was a good VP, managing transactions, and I got better as time went on. But I was a lousy analyst.
Wow. Well, as you're saying that, those 5 levels, it also sounds like there's an element of genuine interest associated with that beyond your talent, education, and your experience. And this is what we talked about in your alignment assessment, right? And it sounds like there's the necessary evil of learning the rules of the game that you're playing. Yes. And also having the awareness around what truly motivates Eric from an interest perspective, and then leveraging those interests in combination with curating your circles of influence and your environment so that you can show up fully expressed. And I'm curious, since you brought it up, your mentor, how crucial has mentorship, coaching, strategic guidance been over the course of your career?
I'm going to give an atypical answer. I have never had a good mentor.
Really?
I've had some individuals who helped me with my career, and they helped me in certain aspects at the time of my career, and they were great teachers, but they were never consistent over my entire 22-year period.
Okay.
I would say I've had you, my coach. That's the first time I've had coaching be successful. I've a couple other people, no disrespect. If you see this, you know who you are. God bless you, but it wasn't as useful as our coaching is very useful. So
received that
I have
from
never
you.
had a mentor. I'm a mentor to people now because I know what I was missing. I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you this: a mentor would have knocked off 8 years of my career if I'd had someone tell me what I was doing wrong. I made a lot of mistakes, and I try to guide men and women now. Learn from me. Don't do this. It'll save you years and years and years off your career. So
Mm-hmm.
I was unfortunate. I didn't have one.
Yeah. Wow. Is it in your line of work over the course of your career, as far as mentorship is concerned, is that something that you got to go looking for? Is it not something that's baked into the institutions and organizations that you worked for as you were coming up?
You got to look for it. People are this is such a demanding job. It
Mm-hmm.
takes up so much of your time mentally, so much of your time physically away from your family. You got to go ask for it. And they have to respect you and like you and be willing to give you the time. But they're not giving it for free. I mean, you got to go ask for it.
Interesting. So there's nobody out there. I mean, not out of the goodness of their heart, obviously, because they're trying to make their book too. But there's nobody. It's rare to just be like recognize good talent and take you under their wing. That's rare.
It was rare for me, and maybe
Yeah.
that's more of a statement about me. Maybe I was not. Well, I'm very coachable, so that's not it. And I'm also very humble. That's not maybe. I don't know. I maybe they're out there. I didn't come across them in
Mm-hmm.
my line of work.
Yeah. Interesting. Huh. So that being said, in your journey through the school of hard knocks, what's the number one for somebody who wants to end up where you are now and shave those 8 years off the journey and take an alternate route to get here? What's the number one piece of advice that you would give them? What would you tell Eric in year 4 if you could go back in time and have that conversation?
That's right. I would tell them exactly what I did. Always show up. There's very few things in life you can control.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 2 things you can control every single day: your work ethic and your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Show up at both of those. I tell anybody, if you give me those 2 things, you got to be intelligent, but I'll make you a good banker. You got to be smart. You can't fake that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are, I'll make you a good banker. Work ethic and attitude, and have a genuine willingness to want to learn and want to advance and want to progress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can't teach. I don't think you can teach that. Not by the time they get to you.
I think you're right. I think, yeah, attitude's interesting. Work ethic, yeah, that's something either ingrained or not. I think I think you're right. I think you're correct. I don't think you can.
It's most definitely. It's not necessarily a question of nature and nurture in my experience, but it is something that is imprinted upon you. The earlier, the better. And what I'm saying is, by the time you're in a sport coat negotiating deals, it's too fucking late to try to get that, to groom that skill. At that point, it really is, you either have it or you don't.
Correct. That's right. And want to do it. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people go from analyst to MD. I bet you it's less than 10%.
Really?
I'm very comfortable with that number. Yep. Most go to private equity or hedge funds or something completely out of finance. I bet you it's less than 10%.
What spits you out?
It's a grind. It's long hours. It's away from family and friends. You're dealing with some very, very hard people. I'm trying to be politically correct here. I'm trying to be nice. Very hard people that aren't very kind. You're talking about, especially in Wall Street, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars in fees. Well, hundreds of millions of dollars in fees, $5, $6, $10 million for the person. They're under a lot of stress. You can't make one mistake. One mistake could cost a $10 million fee. It's not a lot of fun. And it's just a grind. And again, especially in M&A, 8 out of 10 deals are probably going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
At least once. That's hard to take.
What was the moment that pulled off your rose-colored glasses, if you had them at all?
Wow, that's a good question too. I tell you what, it happened recently. I was up until I know exactly when it was. About 5 years ago, when I started my own investment bank.
Uh-huh.
I realized that maybe I knew a lot about M&A, but I had a lot to learn about owning a business. I had a lot to learn about how many people screw you over, your clients, how many people don't pay their bills. I was pretty naive on that. And that's when I realized that not only as a banker, doing the deals is hard, and then running the bank is hard, and then managing the other bankers is hard. Like, Jesus Christ, what did I do here, man? Can I have another job back? That'd be a lot better. So that was just recently, because I had a really, and we're working on right now, you and me, this other thing, Legacy Group. I'm pretty happy with that. That sort of re-energized me because I think I've come up with a better business model.
Yeah.
But I was pretty naive, happy until about 5 years ago. Yeah. Then it kind of changed.
Yeah. It reminds me so much, you know, I was out of the Marine Corps not even a year and a half yet. And I opened the gym, and I had an investor and 3 partners. So it's a 5-headed dragon. I'm the subject matter expert in helping people sweat and smile. I have backing financially in good faith from a committed client. And then I had 3 jamokes who overpromised and underdelivered. And when her and I asked them to leave the sandbox, if you will, and they gave me an invoice for their time, effort, and inconvenience, that was the moment my rose-colored glasses of entrepreneurship were ripped off, because in sitting with my attorney, wanting to be right about this situation, he's like, look here, man, and thankfully it's not your situation, but this is a business model in America where people will, in bad faith, enter into partnership knowing that this shit's going to happen, and you will settle because it's cheaper than being right in the eyes of the law. And I'm a 3-palm Eagle Scout. Both my parents are veterans. I'm a Marine. Integrity's at the top of my value tree. And to be slapped with the reality stick that, like, integrity is rare.
It is.
Pay attention, Michael. You know, all those red flags that you talked about, it's like, oh, wait a minute. That needs to be taken into consideration. Holy shit. And that was a really tough pill to swallow. So, dude, I empathize so much with you from the standpoint of it's the realization of being the practitioner and a role player, and then stepping fully into ownership. Doesn't matter how much talent, education, and experience you have. That's a totally different ball of wax, man.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can control yourself. You can't control them. And it's funny, as you and I are working on something now, even with something recently, even with the red flags, I still think, oh, that person, they're still a good person. Let's give them a shot. No, after 50 red flags, man, just move on.
Don't
well,
you fucking dare.
It should be after 2 or 3 red flags, not 50. But so I'm still learning that too.
Yeah, we don't need to let them accumulate.
Yes,
you know? but that is it's you don't ever want to lose that about yourself. You know, I don't find it to be in our best interest to lose our optimism and our good faith in our fellow human beings. I don't think that helps us in the long term. And at the same time, it is 100% something that needs to be accepted and taken into consideration. And for a lot of people, that's the part of the game that in my experience, makes people fall out of love with business?
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it personally. And that's a big part of it. Yes. That's a big part of what I said 5 years ago. The people stiffing me for money or reading on a contract or making me go after. Yeah, that I would agree with that completely. It's kind of sad, but yeah, you're right. You're right.
And to your point, I think it takes a special kind of crazy to look that in the face and be like, "Fuck it, let's do it again.
Let's do it again." Yeah. Well, our good friend is right upstairs, and she's like, "Why do you keep doing this?"
It's I love it because to me, in our circles of influence, and as you and I continue down this road together, to have done what you're doing and taken the path that you've taken to get here, it's almost as if you're unrelatable to the clock in, clock out version of the human existence. Like, the idea of that doesn't make sense to you, to me, in the same way that what we're talking about doesn't make sense to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, that's correct. That's right. Yeah.
And it's interesting to me to sit here and say, I'd rather do it this way. Isn't it crazy? When you sit here and you think about it that way?
Well, we have this, and we have many things in common, but this we have in common is that we believe that we're really, truly helping people.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I really do. I cannot stand bullies. Never have. Mm-hmm. And that's where I learned to fight at a very young age. I was a very small kid. I cannot stand bullies, but I also can't stand people using their expertise to screw over people who are less involved, like who are less knowledgeable. That's why I wrote this. So when I can save someone, get them out of a bad transaction, get them into a good transaction that takes care of them and their families, their employees, I really feel good about that. So yeah. I like giving good advice. I like making sure people don't get screwed over.
Tell me, because I don't think that it's in the book, and I'm genuinely curious as you bring up the whole I can't stand bullies thing. What was the inciting incident that perpetuated getting this done? Because I've written a book before, and it's a motherfuck of a process. And whether you with all the resources we have available to streamline ideation to publication, it doesn't matter. It's hard. And for everything else that you have going on, Coonrod Co, the Legacy Group, to pull this off and create and inject such value into the world, why'd you write the book?
I was coming across too many instances where people did not know how difficult this was to sell, how difficult it was to sell your business. And I couldn't only tell them so much. And I came across so many times where we're in month 6 or 7 and things went sideways and they just I wasn't expecting all of this. So I like I said before, people don't like surprises. So I wanted to make sure here it is. Here's by the way, there's going to be more than this one too. But here is a start of what you're about to see. And just so you know, it's hard as hell. It's going to suck. But if you do it right, you'll be rewarded at the end. So it was hearing the same story over and over again where I didn't know this. I didn't know this. I wasn't expecting this. Well, let's put an end to that.
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's a book. It's 85 pages, less than 100 pages. So it's super simple. It'll tell you a lot. And then you can read it and ask me more questions. But here's a very baseline of what you're to expect. And people need to know it. It's they like I told you, the individual the other night, he's a brilliant doctor. He thought it would take 3 months and cost him nothing. No, not even close, man. Not even close. Because lawyers and bankers aren't cheap. And the good ones really aren't cheap. But you get what you pay for. So
yeah. Well, dude, I'm glad that you have it out there, and I have it on good authority from those that have had successful exits despite all the hurdles they had to overcome and the headaches that came with it, that they wish they had the preparation principle before they started down that path. So, dude, it's an honor to work with you. Where can anybody who's looking for the preparation principle or needs access to you and your wisdom find you?
The book is on Amazon, so go there. The Preparation Principle, that's easy.
Make sure that's in the
You
show
can reach
notes.
me. My email address is Eric, ERIC, at ecoonrodco.com. And my website is www.ecoonrodco.com. So ECOONRODCO.com. And my email address is Eric at ecoonrodco.com.
Love it,
That's
man.
how you find me.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm grateful for you, man. And for everybody out there who is on the path to selling their business, start with that premise and you'll find yourself in a much better place, as Eric has so eloquently positioned in the preparation principle. And remember, the fittest leaders approach the game from a place of integrity, courage, and ownership. And all of it rests upon the foundation of alignment first. We'll see you next time.